Doki Doki Literature Club has gained some popularity on the internet, and I recently played it myself. This video will contain spoilers as I tackle my biggest gripe with the game and its narrative. Keep in mind, I don't hate it. I think the game is good, though not great. This isn't the only reason why, but I'm not going to tackle anything else in the game, good or bad, unless it's relevant to the topic, so don't take this as a review. The game opens up to seem like a normal anime dating sim, presenting its 4 waifus and how you choose yours, poetry. After joining the literature club with them though, it quickly becomes pretty clear that not everything is nice and light-hearted. Even before you start the game, both the game and Steam page give a disclaimer that it's not for the easily disturbed, and there's extensive foreshadowing to the point where I found the larger turns of the plot predictable. Hell, they even lampshade the foreshadowing. That's not something you see every day. This is better than having no foreshadowing and relying on the shock of the actions to carry the game, however, and in this first part it works well to set up Sayori confessing that she has depression to the main character after a few days of reading manga with Natsuki or a book with Yuri. She's had it all her life, but never told anyone because she considers herself worthless and doesn't want to make anyone else worry about her. I really liked this. I was expecting her to commit suicide at some point and had many thoughts on how it would be implemented if it happened. A slow progression towards inevitable tragedy seemed interesting but wouldn't really work narratively. It may be because of my personal experiences that this struck a chord with me, but that's always going to happen with this kind of narrative. Before anything else happens with Sayori, you have a date, either with Yuri setting up the atmosphere for a poem reading event at the festival the day after, or Natsuki making cupcakes for it. Yuri brings her very nice knife, commenting among other things that it cuts through skin as if it were paper, and other not so subtle clues that she's cutting herself and not entirely okay. Again, I find it a bit overboard and heavy-handed at times, but the timing is perfect, as you were just told about Sayori's depression, but you have not been able to deal with it yet. Natsuka's scene is a lot more innocent. It's slightly uncomfortable reading it, with the knowledge that she was likely abused by her father, as the main character uses physical force to overpower her, and she has the typical clue drop before telling you to forget it. Yuri's quite unsettling scene was uncomfortable to me. You just learned about Sayori's depression, and now another character's obvious problems too. Do all the characters have these deep-seated mental issues? Natsuka's scene isn't unsettling, but I felt unable to fully enjoy it because of Sayori's issues fresh on my mind. These two scenes, Sayori confessing about her depression and then the date with either girl, followed by the next, is definitely my favorite part of the game, and was the most impactful for me. It's quite different depending on which choices you make, as I mentioned, but all combinations and paths have their own strengths. This next scene takes place outside your house, saying goodbye to your sweetheart in an intimate moment, interrupted by Sayori. She wanted to see for herself how your date went, and you end up having 2 choices. I love you makes for a mostly nice scene where Sayori says she still doesn't feel happy, but she's clearly better, and you may even think that there's a possibility for a happy ending. And You Will Always Be My Dearest Friend makes for a mostly tragic scene where the MC foolishly says, I know what's best for you, which is going back to how things always were. You know, back to when she had crippling depression and he had no idea. Sayori says she understands, but she can't keep up the act for long and finally screams in despair and runs back to her house. The next morning you go to school looking forward to the festival. Sayori's late as usual, which should clue most players into the fact that now's the time, and Monika shares the wonderful little poem that Sayori was going to perform. Many lines of get out of my head, followed by get out of my head before I do what I know is best for you, get out of my head before I listen to everything she said to me, get out of my head before I show you how much I love you, get out of my head before I finish writing this poem, and then, lastly, but a poem is never actually finished, it just stops moving. The main character runs back to her house, finding that she has hung herself in quite the dramatic moment, and this moment, this very moment, marks the end of the traditional narrative of Doki Doki Literature Club. The meta-narrative begins a handful of seconds later. Some people may not have paid much attention to it and think that the meta-elements only start appearing once the end screen shows and you start a new game with the game breaking down and all that. But about 10 seconds after you first see Sayori hanging herself, even before that if you count the film grain and more obvious filters, fake graphical glitches and so on, you see an exception has occurred. File game script ch5.rpy line 307. See traceback.txt for details. If you notice this, and it is on the screen for at least 5 seconds until you click to continue, though with Cyrus slightly moving dead body there, I can see not paying a lot of attention to it. Anyway, if you do notice it, it becomes immediately obvious that there is more going on in the game than you originally may have believed. I didn't find it easy to predict what exactly is going on here beyond Monika having something to do with it, and it involving meta-elements and fourth wall breaking somehow. Before even ending this first act of the game, I opened traceback.txt in the game files, as it's clearly referred to, and like other players I was met with restart top context. Oh geez, I didn't break anything, did I? Hold on a sec, I can probably fix this. I think. Actually, you know what? This would probably be a lot easier if I just deleted her. She's the one who's making this so difficult. Well, here goes nothing. You may also notice the happythoughts.png file there as well, which is another clue, and there are more files that show up here as you continue playing the game, clicking where new game was previously and where there's just an unintelligible mess of symbols now. This starts the second act of the game, which consists entirely of build-up to the third and final act, and these two together make up the meta-narrative arc of the game. Throughout about 2 hours, the game will break, the characters will not act like themselves, and at times seem entirely psychotic. Monika has some more allusions to her meta-knowledge, and so on. There is some insight into Natsuki and Yuri's issues. Yuri, of course, cuts herself, and you catch her in the act. It's explained by Monika that she does it when she feels excited or too stimulated, but it's not really explored beyond that, despite being a big focus for this act. And a lot of the black text dialogue and changes that are here don't really do anything except disturb the player. Natsuki will have some black text dialogue about her father beating her if he found her manga collection, and Monika explains that he never leaves food for her to eat and doesn't make food for her often, so she suffers from malnutrition. We can use this information to color events from the past, like her date, her poems, and some dialogue, and it does give some insight into her character, but it doesn't really explore it as much as just present it for the player to run away with. This is why I say this is just a setup. Small parts of it can give insight into scenes in the first act, or explore issues of the characters, but it's really limited. It basically just tells us that Natsuki has father issues and Yuri is obsessive, and it's also just 2 of the 3 characters, with Sayori being gone, deleted. So Yuri stabs herself like the crazy bitch she's become, and the main character waits the entire weekend before Natsuki and Monika come back on the Monday. Natsuki puking and leaving, and Monika apologizing. Apparently she didn't know the script was broken that badly. The act ends with Monika apologizing again and deleting the remaining characters, leaving just Monika. She then explains it all, saying she knows she's in a game and all that, breaking the fourth wall for good this time and hopefully making the player feel bad about not being able to help her. She was manipulating the other characters' emotions to make them unappealing for the main character, but the way the game is coded, no matter what, he is not able to choose to date Monika. So her only option in the end was to delete everything else. I don't think there's anything too interesting here. It serves as a decent ending to the main bit of the metaplot, but the poems are, as in the rest of the game, where it really shines, and there are also some more text files in the game files from earlier that add to this as well. These two components are much more impactful than the dialogue of the actual reveal. Finally, you delete Monica. She has some dialogue as she eventually understands everything would be better without her, so she restores the other characters and lets the player play the game normally. That is, until Sayuri reveals that she now knows about everything that has happened, and the curse of the club president, or whatever you want to call it, lives on. Monica returns and slowly deletes the entire game while the credits roll and her song she was practicing on the piano all this time plays. This is definitely more impactful than the previous part and serves as a very good ending to the game and its meta-narrative, but as with the Act 2, it doesn't do much to address the other girls or the plot points introduced in the first part of the game. I'm sorry if this was largely summarizing the game. I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. There are some different paths to go in the game that I wanted to point out, and it's important for me to explain exactly why I think the second act is mostly set up and doesn't expand well upon what is established in the first act, and also why the final act as a conclusion is really only concerned with concluding the second act and the meta-narrative. I also didn't want someone watching this to have to play the game in order to understand, but I'm not sure if I was successful there or if it's even relevant. That is pretty much it. I intended to do a big conclusion where I said all my opinions on the two together, how they complemented or overshadowed each other and all of that, but I think I drizzled that in throughout talking about each one of them, and I don't have a lot more to say. The poems are the one part I feel was fully realized, and it does a good job of tying the two parts together somewhat, but I don't think there's enough there. There's so much potential in the deep-seated issues these girls have as presented in the first act, and it never really goes anywhere. As Monica puts it, all three of them have loathing, judgment, elitism, and self-doubt, all thrashing to escape the feeble hold of their hosts. It's very dramatic, but bear with me. Seeping into Sayuri's willpower, starving her of all motivation and desire, into Natsuki's stomach, forcing her to drown her guilt in comfort food, or into a newly opened gash in Yuri's skin, hidden only by the sleeves of a cute new shirt. If this came through in the game and was explored in the overarching meta-narrative and complemented by it, I would love it. As is, though, it is introduced late in the first part and then expanded on only in certain game files, like There's a Little Devil Inside All of Us, and in the poems. The poems are amazing, I think I've said so enough times in this video already, but sadly they feel like a mere taste of what could have been, and make up only a small part of the whole narrative when all is said and done, and that's accounting for all the extra poems you get by playing more than once. If you have any thoughts, feedback, or anything you'd like to discuss, please feel free to do so. Thank you for watching, it was really fun making this, even if I may not sound it.